Alexander the Great of ancient Greece and the manuscripts of the Nephilim, the abominable beasts, creatures, races. This was one of the goals that he had, to lock them up and do away with them. Those he couldn't do away with, he threw in pits covered with brass, bronze, and built pyramids over them all over India and China. This is one of the Cyclops statues in the Colosseum. Now, we shouldn't be surprised that Greek myth, this is Ulysses giving wine to the Cyclops to get him drunk so that he and his men could leave the imprisonment he had them under. But, the Cyclops, the culture was around the archaic of ancient Greece, around the 8th century BC, classical 500 BC, and even 300 BC, at the time of course, Alexander the Great. And we shouldn't be surprised. I mean, we know that around 1000 BC, at the time of King David of Israel, he had to fight off Goliath. Goliath had 5 brothers that were just as big and hairy and as him, six-fingered, six-toed. So they were around even in those days, so we shouldn't be surprised, because Alexander the Great lived about 700 years after King David. So these are the translations of the manuscript of Alexander the Great and the Nephilim, continuing the series of articles on the proofs of the existence of ancient gods in the world, the Nephilim, or the giants otherwise. The ancients had them as their giants, their gods, quote unquote. Now, we'll refer to a subject that's little known, and this is the unknown campaign of Alexander the Great in the desert of China, called the Taklamakan Desert. So they had to defeat these beings that could threaten the whole world, as they had done many years ago, threat to the human race. Kindly support my Patreon account, since YouTube has again demonetized my YouTube channel. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support, and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below. One would say, but it is never possible for Alexander the Great to fight the Nephilim. There's nowhere evidence for this campaign. Of course there are, and one would say that they are not few, and they prove the existence of the ancient gods, these giants, these Nephilim, these Anunnaki, whatever you want to call them, the fallen angels, and the remnants of the children of the fallen angels. So the existence of these ancient quote-unquote gods, and the war that Alexander the Great waged against them. These are the following sources. 1. The first source is found in a text of Saint John Chrysostom, the Bishop of Constantinople, entitled Vision of Daniel, Visio Danielis in Latin, that has been saved, and tells us about how Alexander the Great met the canine heads, and not only them, and after a prayer to God, Alexander believed in one God, and you will see this in the text. And let's remember that the Archangel Gabriel gave the prophet Daniel the prophecy of Alexander the Great, coming from being young, reigning only 10 years, coming from the north of Greece, and doing away with the big horn that was at that time, of course, the power of Persia, of Iran. And it was the Greeks that did away with put an end to the Persian Empire. So that was in the Old Testament at the time of the prophet Daniel, when Israel was in exile in Babylon. So there was a prophecy concerning Alexander the Great and what he had to do. So Alexander believed in one God, and we'll see that in the text. and he sealed these Nephilim with bronze gates, and he entered into the earth. They entered into the earth, where he found an undiscovered nation, all flocks, donkeys, oxen, cats, mice, and all reptiles. That is hybrid, these hybrid beings that he called abominable races. Now, half man, half animal. And the dead ook burial, but rather these abominable creations, these births of hybrid beings and kinds of beasts, half man, half beast, like the centaurs, which were half horse, half man, the cyclops that had giants that were one-eyed giants, the half goat, half man, which were pan creations, things like that. The Medusa heads, and a lot of the, even in ancient Hindu texts, we have all these hybrid beasts as well. Anyway, on these things which were done in the fields, lest they should be spread abroad upon the earth, and it should be known unto them of the Lord extensively, that a man and a woman and children should be gathered unto them, and should say, all these things shall come upon them, and they shall bring them forth from thence. Okay, this was translated from an ancient Greek text. Now, as soon as Alexander begged God and locked them up with copper gates, he used them unabashedly. These are the cruel and rebellious, abominable races, nations, hybrid creations. All the magical imperfections are being abused, and yet their filthy and half-divine charm has been abolished by the nature of the unrequited. On the last day of the world's retribution, canine heads emerged, and after entering that land, he found an unknown nation, but also every dirty type of a creature, and snakes and cats, flies, and every reptile, and their dead were not buried but eaten like the products of abortions and every kind of beast. In other words, abominable things. Seeing all this, Alexander the Great, with the fear that they might leave that place and spill all over the earth and infect it with their filthy deeds, he gathered all of them together with their children, their husbands, their wives, and after he had taken them out of that land, he pursued them until they entered the northern parts. And there was no other entrance either from the east or from the west. Alexander immediately prayed to God and locked them up in copper gates, which he covered with unbreakable glass, an energy field, that is. Despite the fact, we know that pyramids have energy fields. Now, despite the fact that after these filthy creatures, beasts, they tried all magical ways they knew through their evil arts, and their one and half godly power abolished the quality of this energy field. In the final days, towards the end of the world, the cinocephali, the dog-faced, the savromatis, the reptilians, the Gogs and the Magogs will come out, and they are together with the other 72 kings of the Nephilim, that is, the 72 who were closed in these gates by Alexander the Great. Now, number 2, the traditions of the people follow about the campaign of Alexander, and at the same time the existence of these Nephilim creatures. God sent Alexander the Great to punish the wicked, these Nephilim. When Alexander defeated King Porus, he caught him and imprisoned him in the dark pits of a hill, into which he enclosed the dog heads. From there, Porus can only get out in later times. Above these hills, Alexander the Great inserted a fork and put a bell that rings alone in the wind. The dog heads, when they hear the bell, know that Alexander is there and is guarding them. They will come out in the future and start the work that God intended for them. Dog heads have one eye on the forehead and one on the neck. They are violent and extremely bad. Their speech is bad. They catch people, and after, I'm not going to say what they do to them. The second, the wind moves the ships in the seas and cleanses the atmosphere from evil. He also rings the bell, which Alexander the Great placed above the hills, where the dog heads are enclosed, which will come out after a while at the end of time. 3. From the text, that's according to St. John Chrysostom, okay? He was the bishop of, he's a saint. It's his liturgy that we do every Sunday. Now, number 3, from the text of the prophecy of St. Andrew of Crete, the Fool of Christ, regarding the existence of the filthy genera and their battle with Alexander the Great. In other words, these abominable NEPHILIM Anunnaki things. Now, in that year, the Lord will open the gates of India, closed by Alexander the Great, the king of the Macedonians. These will be spread all over the world, and I'm not going to, I'm not going to go into what they do, but it's it's against people, obviously. Now, they will also devour flies, frogs, dogs, and any dirt with great pleasure. Woe to the areas where they will pass. If it's possible, Lord, let there be no Christians then. I know that there will be. Those days will be darkened, as if mourning in the air of the abominations that choose scheming nations, that those scheming nations will commit. The sun will become like blood, while the moon and all the stars will be darkened, as they will be seen on earth competing in impurity. These people will dig up the earth, make toilets the altars, and put the holy utensils to dishonorable use. And number 4, from an unknown manuscript on the same subject, in the last days and the last day of the end of the century of the era, that is, Gog and Magog will go out to the land of Ishmael. The nations and kings and the enclosed languages will come out, the enclosed beast entities, hybrid entities will come out again. Open, Anig, Achenos, Diphoros, Difar, Pharisees, Declims, Zaramatai, Fliveos, Zarmatians, Caconians, Asamastai, Garmiades, Kinokephaloi, meaning dogheads, Tharbois, Alanes, Physolonicians, Aranians, Asartanians, and Magov, Casonan, Castivas of the Castivas, and when they come out, the consequence is near and there is no time left. I've translated this from a Greek article, and this is just three more evidence of two of them being Christian saints, of course, and texts having to do with the mission that Alexander the Great had to close up as many of these Nephilim hybrid human-animal entities that he could. And of course, it's under pyramids of India and China. Until God opens up the gates of these entities and they will flood the earth, unfortunately. This is also the prophecy that we read in the Book of Revelation of the New Testament. Please leave your comments, and thank you for your support.